Hey guys, tonight we're slipping past the velvet ropes and the searchlights of 1930s Hollywood into a glittering dream factory that ran on something far less glamorous than talent, a small white pill handed out with the coffee and the call sheet. Not magic, not discipline, not some superhuman work ethic. No, the radiance you saw on screen was very often powered by amphetamines going into the morning and sleeping pills closing out the night. Before we dim the lights, a quick thank you for spending your evening here, and if these drowsy histories carry you off to sleep, tapping subscribe is genuinely the kindest thing you can do for a small channel like this one. Let me know down below which corner of the world you're drifting off in tonight, and whether you'd last a week in a job that wakes you with one pill and puts you under with another. Now get comfortable, dim the room, get the pillow just right, tug a quilt over one shoulder, and maybe hide your alarm clock somewhere a studio executive could never reach it. Ever stop to ask how a 16-year-old got kept on her feet and working for 3 days straight? Why the studio doctor's entire job was making sure the bottle never ran empty? How you could buy the most powerful stimulant in America right next to the cough drops, no questions asked? What the official diet of a glamorous movie star actually was, item by item? Did anyone in that town ever sleep because they were tired, instead of because a capsule told them to? And who, exactly, was setting that little pill on the nightstand every single night? Congratulations, you just woke up in Los Angeles 1937. There's a glass of water and a pill beside your bed, placed there by someone who is not you. Your call time is before sunrise. Your body, whether it agrees or not, has already been scheduled, fed, and dosed by people you have never met. Good luck. You wake before the sun does, in a bungalow the studio is paying for, and the first decision of your day has already been made for you. On the nightstand there is a glass of water and a small white pill, set out the night before by someone who is not you. You take it before your feet hit the floor, because that is the schedule, and the schedule is not yours to question. Within 20 minutes the fog lifts, your heart picks up, and the exhaustion you went to bed with quietly steps out of the room. Nobody calls it a drug. That word is not used here. Here it's a little something to get you going, a helper, a habit no more remarkable than the coffee it rides in on. The pill is Benzedrine, an amphetamine, and 20 minutes ago it walked into your bloodstream and started rearranging the furniture. The tiredness is still technically in the building. It has just been asked to wait in another room and not make a scene. What the pill actually does is borrow. It doesn't hand you energy you earned with sleep, because you didn't sleep. Not really. It reaches into tomorrow, takes out a loan against energy you haven't generated yet, and spends it all now, at an interest rate nobody discloses. For the next several hours you'll feel sharp, capable and magnificent, like a person who could rehearse a number and reorganize the studio and fall in love before lunch. The bill for all of this arrives later. It always arrives later. The pill beside your bed didn't get there by accident. Someone counted it out, set it on the nightstand, and filled the glass, the way another household lays out school clothes. You're 30 seconds into being awake, and you've already taken the most important instruction of your day, and you took it horizontal, eyes barely open, on faith. Greta, who keeps the bungalow, is the one who sets it out. She does it last thing at night, after the lamps are off, placing the pill dead center on the saucer and squaring the glass beside it like she's dressing a tiny altar. She has never once said what it is. She just lines it up, smooths the bedspread, and pulls the door to. In the morning the saucer is empty, and neither of you mentions it. You sit up. The room sharpens. The dull ache behind your eyes, the one that's been there so long you stopped naming it, lifts like a curtain going up. This is the part that makes the whole arrangement so hard to refuse. The feeling is genuinely wonderful. That's not a flaw in the system. That's the entire system, working exactly as designed, because a misery you could see clearly would be a misery you might leave. Your heart is going now, a little quick, a little eager, knocking against your ribs to remind you it has been volunteered for overtime. You barely notice anymore. A racing heart at dawn has become as ordinary as the milk truck, just another thing that happens in the dark before the lot opens its gates. You stand. You're upright, which an hour ago seemed unlikely, and you're already composing the day in your head at a speed that feels like brilliance and is mostly chemistry. The bungalow is quiet. The studio that owns the bungalow, the contract, the schedule, and the small white pill is not yet visibly in the room, but it was the first thing to touch you this morning, before the water, before your own 2 feet found the floor. You finished the glass. Somewhere a car is already idling to carry you to the lot, where a chair and a light and a long list of things you owe are waiting. You don't feel tired. That's the point. The tired is still there, patient, owed, quietly accruing in a back room you are not allowed to enter. You just woke up. You already took it. The day can start now, because the day was never going to ask whether you were ready. You stop by the doctor's office on the lot the way other people stop by the water cooler. It is a small white room near the sound stages, staffed by a physician the studio pays and a nurse who knows your name and your call time. You are not sick. You have never been sick here. You are here because the bottle in your dressing room is running low, and the doctor's entire job, the one written into his contract the same way yours is written into yours, is to make sure it never runs out. Dr. Ainsley greets you warmly, because Dr. Ainsley greets everyone warmly. He has the easy, unhurried manner of a man who has never once had to say no, which is precisely why the studio hired him over the kind of doctor who might. His office smells of rubbing alcohol and importance. On the shelf behind him sit rows of sample bottles in tidy ranks, donated freely by the drug companies, who send them by the case the way a brewery might comp drinks to a popular bar. You tell him you've been a little run down. He nods as though this is fresh and concerning news, rather than the same sentence he has heard 400 times this month. He doesn't examine you. There's nothing to examine. The diagnosis was made the day you signed, and the treatment is whatever keeps you upright through a 14-hour day. He's less a physician here than a sort of pharmacist with a nicer chair, dispensing energy on a release schedule that matches the production calendar exactly. Miss Pruitt, the nurse, already has the bottle ready before he asks. She moves through the little room like a stagehand who knows the show by heart, capping, counting, labelling, her shoes squeaking softly on the linoleum. She hands you the refill with a smile so practiced it could hold up a building, and a second smaller envelope for nighttime, because the daytime pills create a problem the nighttime pills are paid to solve. The arrangement has a quiet brilliance to it. A doctor who works for your employer is not really your doctor. He's a checkpoint dressed as a caregiver, a man whose loyalty was decided by his paycheck long before you walked in. Anything you tell him about feeling strange, jittery, hollowed out, travels straight up to the people who control your career, which means the smart move, the move everyone learns, is to tell him you feel marvellous and take the bottle and go. He asks, almost as an afterthought, how you're sleeping. You both know the answer. You both know why. You say fine, and he writes nothing down, and the conversation politely agrees not to notice itself. This is the original concierge medicine, the menu written by your boss. The customer kept comfortable and quiet and refilled. There is no charge. The visit costs you nothing, or rather it costs you nothing today, which is a very different thing from costing nothing. The studio absorbs the expense the way it absorbs the cost of film stock and arc lamps, a routine line item in the making of a picture, filed somewhere between makeup and gasoline. You pocket the bottle. Dr. Ainsley walks you to the door, a hand light on your shoulder, already smiling past you toward whoever is next in the corridor, because there is always someone next. Miss Pruitt is already laying out a fresh syringe on a clean cloth for an actor whose name you'd recognize. The little white room never closes during a shoot. It simply restocks. You step back out into the daylight of the lot, refilled, certified, and entirely unwell in a way that no one in that office is being paid to find. The bottle is heavier in your pocket than its size suggests. You have your ration. You are cleared to keep working. You sign the contract in a room full of smiling men, and you did not read all of it, because nobody reads all of it, and because the men were smiling. It is 7 years long. It decides your name, your roles, your hair color, your weight, and how much of yourself legally belongs to you between now and 1944. You are finding out the terms the way everyone finds out the terms, which is slowly, one clause at a time, usually at the exact moment the clause is being used against you. The document itself is thick enough to prop open a stage door. It sits in a drawer in the legal building, a small phone book of a thing, every page another sentence you agreed to without quite agreeing to it. It sounds, at a glance, like a professional commitment between two reasonable parties. Read closely, it begins to sound less like employment and more like a very polite hostage situation with a wardrobe allowance, Mr. Selwyn from the legal department is the one who explains the parts that matter, and he explains them only when they become useful to the studio. He has a way of sliding a single page across his desk, tapping one paragraph with a manicured finger and waiting, the way a man waits when he already knows you have no move. He never raises his voice. He doesn't need to. The contract does all the shouting, in tiny, patient and relentless print on his behalf. Here is the clause that surprises everyone. If you refuse a film, the studio can suspend you without pay. That part you expected. What you didn't expect is that the suspension time gets added onto the end of your contract, so that saying no doesn't shorten your sentence, it lengthens it. Refusing to work makes you owe more work. It's the gym membership of indentured labour, except you can't cancel and the contract can quietly renew itself by punishing you. Your name went first. They decided the one your mother gave you wasn't right for a marquee, and so they replaced it, briskly, the way you'd rename a racehorse. You answer to it now. You've answered to it so long it started to feel like yours, which is the small daily magic of the whole arrangement, the way a thing done to you slowly becomes a thing about you. The contract has opinions about your body. There is, genuinely, language about your weight, a number you are expected to remain near, enforceable by people who have never met your appetite. There is language about your conduct, about who you may be seen with, about what you may say to a reporter. There is language somewhere in the back that lets them lend you to another studio for money you'll never see. You are, in the plainest legal sense, an asset that walks and talks and occasionally asks for a raise. What there is not, anywhere in those pages, is a clause about the pills. The pills aren't in the contract. They don't need to be. They're the unwritten machinery that makes the written terms physically possible, the only way a human body could actually deliver the 7 years the document so confidently sells. The contract demands the hours. The bottle supplies the hours. Mr. Selwyn never mentions the bottle, because Mr. Selwyn only handles the parts that are written down. You could fight it. People do. They hire lawyers, they go on suspension, they wait out the clock that the studio keeps resetting. Most don't. Most learn the clauses one at a time, sign whatever gets put in front of them, and keep the peace, because peace is the only thing in this building that comes free. You put the page back on Mr. Selwyn's desk. He smiles. Finally, now that the conversation has gone the only way it was ever going to go, you walk out having lost an argument you didn't know you were having, against a document you signed before you ever learned to read it. Every Monday you step onto a scale, and a number decides how your week goes. Someone from the studio writes the number down on a card, the same card every week, and compares it to the number they have decided your body is allowed to be. There is no negotiation. There is no explanation that involves the words holidays or human or hungry. If the number is wrong, the diet tightens and the pills increase, and you learn, fast, that the fastest way to make the scale happy is to simply stop eating. The scale lives in a back room near wardrobe, a cold professional instrument that does not flatter and was never meant to. Miss Hargrove keeps the card. She licks the tip of her pencil before each entry, a small ceremonial gesture, as though the number deserves a moment of solemnity before it goes down in ink. She is not unkind. She simply works for the number, and the number works for the men upstairs, and you work, somewhere at the bottom of all of it, for the privilege of weighing less than you did last week. The target was not set by a doctor concerned for your health. It was set by a camera which adds a famous and merciless amount to everyone it photographs, and by men who have decided exactly how much of you the public is permitted to see. Your body is a costume the studio is renting, and a costume that no longer fits the cut is a problem to be solved, not a person to be fed. It's a fitting room where the verdict is always that you are the wrong size. When the number climbs, the response is swift and entirely chemical. The diet contracts to something a polite person would call insufficient, and an honest one would call punishing. The pills do double duty here, because amphetamine doesn't only keep you awake, it quietly closes your appetite like a hand over a candle. You aren't told to starve. You're simply given a drug that makes food feel optional, and then praised on Monday for your discipline. The meal that survives this regime is famous in its own grim way: clear soup, black coffee, a cigarette standing in for everything a body normally requires. Mr. Mayor himself, the kind of man who could call a 16-year-old cruel names about her figure and then sign the order for her appetite suppressants in the same afternoon, considered this a reasonable arrangement. He was not unusual. He was the template. You step off the scale. Miss Hargrove notes the figure, nods or doesn't, and that small motion sets the temperature of your whole week, A good number buys you a few hours of being left alone. A bad number summons a meeting, a tightening, a fresh look at the bottle. Your worth this morning has been reduced to a quantity a machine can measure, and the machine has no interest in why. The cruelty of it is how reasonable everyone manages to sound. Nobody screams. They speak of camera weight and silhouette and the line of a gown, gentle technical words for a process that is teaching a young person to be afraid of supper. The number on the card is treated as objective, as scientific, as simply the way things are. The way a leaking roof is simply the way things are if no one with money decides to fix it. You get dressed. The cigarette is already lit, doing the work the soup didn't. Somewhere a costume is being taken in a 1/4 inch, and somewhere a card is being filed, and somewhere a man who has never once been hungry on purpose is satisfied that the asset is performing within spec. Next Monday the scale will be there again, cold, patient and unmoved, exactly where you left it. You already know what you will do to meet it. You will eat less and take more, and call the result discipline, because that is the word they taught you for it. You arrive at the lot in the dark, and you will leave it in the dark, and the hours in between belong to the production. A shooting day is not 8 hours. It is 12 or 14 or 18, 6 days a week for as long as the picture takes. Your body was not built to perform under hot lights from dawn until past midnight while hitting the same mark with the same smile take after take. So your body is given help. The help comes in a small bottle, and it is not optional. The soundstage is a windowless box, which is the whole point. Inside it there is no morning and no evening, no weather, no proof that the world is turning. Time is whatever the assistant director says it is, and the assistant director, a brisk man named Mr. Pell with a clipboard he holds like a steering wheel, says it is still today, always still today, for as long as the budget needs it to be. The lights are the part nobody warns you about. They are arc lamps hot enough to cook under, and they pour down on the set until the air shimmers and your makeup begins a slow private migration toward your collar. You stand inside that heat and you act relaxed, breezy, in love, terrified, whatever the page requires, while a bead of sweat plans its escape and a man behind a camera tells you to do it once more, smaller this time. By the 8th hour, your real body would like to lie down on the painted floor and become furniture. This is not allowed. This is, in fact, the precise moment the bottle was designed for. A pill goes in, and 20 minutes later the exhaustion is escorted off stage and the borrowed lift takes its place, and you are upright and luminous again, running on tomorrow's energy at today's prices. The genius of the schedule, from the studio's side, is that it never has to admit it is impossible. It simply assumes a body that doesn't tire, and then quietly supplies the chemistry that pretends to be that body. The pill makes the impossible day look merely demanding. Everyone agrees to call the difference professionalism. It is the original always-on workplace, except the device that can't be switched off is you. There is a clock on the wall that you have learned not to look at, because looking does nothing but hurt, Mr. Pell calls the next setup. The crew moves the lights, lays new track, repositions the camera, and you stand in your mark in the heat with your chemical brightness and you wait, smiling at no one, because the smile has to be ready the instant the slate claps. Meals happen the way fires happen, briefly and with urgency. A sandwich appears, half of it gets eaten, the rest gets abandoned when they call you back. The pill has closed your appetite anyway, so the sandwich is mostly theatre, a prop that proves the studio feeds you. Hunger isn't the problem here. Hunger left hours ago, chemically excused. Somewhere past the 14th hour, a strange clarity sets in. Bright, brittle and borrowed. You feel sharp. You feel capable. You also feel a little like a lamp that has been left on so long the bulb has begun to hum. The brightness is real and the source is rented, and the part of you keeping track of the difference has gone quiet to save energy. They call the final shot near midnight. You hit your mark, you say the line. The smile holds. A car waits in the dark to carry you back to a bed where a different pill is already laid out to undo the first one. Tomorrow the windowless box will open at dawn and call it today again, and the clock on the wall will go on saying nothing you want to hear. At the end of the day there is a problem, and the problem is that you cannot sleep. You have been awake on purpose for 16 hours with chemical assistance, and the chemicals do not simply switch off because the lights did. Your mind is still running the day's dialogue at full volume. So there is a second pill, a different colour, waiting on the same nightstand where the morning one will appear. This one is heavier. This one does not lift you up. This one reaches in and turns you off, on a timer, whether you are finished thinking or not. It's a barbiturate, Nembutal most likely, a small, yellow, and dependable capsule with a reputation. Where the morning pill is a hand pulling you up out of the water, this one is a hand pressing you gently and firmly under it. There's no negotiating with it once it takes hold. It doesn't coax you toward rest the way tiredness does. It simply closes the show, kills the lights in your skull, and leaves you somewhere dark until morning, on a schedule that serves the call sheet, not you. The arrangement is its own small, perfect trap. The morning pill made sleep impossible, which is the reason the night pill exists. The night pill leaves you thick and slow at dawn, which is the reason the morning pill exists. Each drug is the answer to the problem the other drug created. You are a seesaw that two chemicals take turns sitting on, and at no point does anyone consider just letting the seesaw rest level on the ground. You lie back. You wait for it to arrive, and it arrives the way a tide does, from the toes up, a heaviness that isn't quite peace. Your last thought tends to get cut off mid-sentence, which is unsettling the first 100 times and then becomes ordinary, just the way evenings end now. Real sleep has a softness to it, a settling. This is more like a switch being thrown by someone else, in another room, who has decided you've been on long enough. The danger of the capsule is in how little room it leaves for error. The gap between a dose that puts you under and a dose that doesn't let you back up is narrower than anyone tells a tired person fumbling at a nightstand in the dark. Add a glass of wine to take the edge off the day, and the gap narrows further. People who fully intended to wake up have failed to, not out of despair, but out of arithmetic, in a fog, reaching for one more because the first one didn't seem to land. Miss Coyle, the night nurse who looks in on the bungalow during heavy shoots, sets the capsule out and lingers by the door until she sees you take it. She has a clipboard, of course. Everyone here has a clipboard. And she ticks a little box that confirms the asset has been safely powered down for the evening. Then she turns the lamp off with 2 fingers, soft as closing a piano lid, and pulls the door to behind her. What you've lost, somewhere in all this, is the simple animal experience of being tired and then lying down and then sleeping. That sequence, which costs most people nothing, has been replaced by a managed 2-pill ritual that books your unconsciousness in advance. You no longer fall asleep. You are put to sleep the way a house guest is shown to a room, politely, on someone else's timing. The capsule reaches its full weight. The room goes distant. Tomorrow's white pill is already waiting on the saucer a few feet away, set out by hands that will be gone before you wake, ready to undo tonight at the appointed hour. You go under. It isn't rest exactly, but it counts as rest on the card, and the card is the only thing keeping score. You do not actually control your own medication, and you realize this slowly, on a day when you ask for it and someone says not yet. There is a person assigned to you, called a chaperone or a coach or an assistant, whose real job includes the bottle. They decide when the morning pill comes and when the night pill comes and how many. They are pleasant about it. They are with you constantly. And somewhere along the way, the line between the person who looks after you and the person who manages your supply has quietly disappeared, and you cannot find it again. Her name is Miss Dabney, and she is, on paper, a wonderful arrangement. She handles your schedule, your scripts, your appointments, the 1,000 small frictions of a famous life. She also keeps the bottle in her handbag, which she carries the way a banker carries a key, snapped shut, close to the body, never quite set down where you might reach it without going through her first. You like her. That's the complicated part. She remembers your sister's birthday and your fear of the dentist and the way you take your terrible coffee. She is genuinely kind to you, which makes the other thing harder to name, the way every kindness arrives bundled with a quiet supervision you never agreed to. She isn't your jailer. She's your friend who happens to hold the keys, which is somehow worse, because you can't even be properly angry at her. The morning you ask for the pill early and she says, gently, not yet, is the morning you understand the actual shape of things. You feel the floor tilt. You are a grown adult who is famous across an entire country, and you have just been told no by a woman with a handbag about a substance your own body has started to insist on. The wanting that rises up in that moment is fresh, sharp, and shameful, and you smile and say, of course, because making a scene would only confirm what the studio already suspects. She doses you on the studio's logic, not yours. The pill comes when the schedule needs you bright and goes away when the schedule wants you down, and Miss Dabney is simply the warm human interface for a cold production decision made several offices above her. She isn't cruel about it. She probably believes she's protecting you. In a sense, she is, the way a thermostat protects a room, by keeping it at the temperature someone else set. The arrangement makes you a strange kind of child. You have a manager for your consciousness, a person who decides whether you get to be awake or asleep, energetic or still. It's a little like having a parent who controls your bedtime, if the bedtime were chemical and the parent reported to a film studio. The independence everyone assumes a movie star must have, the freedom the fan magazines sell, stops abruptly at the clasp of Miss Dabney's handbag. What you cannot do is fire her, because she isn't really yours. She's the studio's, placed beside you the way a minder is placed beside anything valuable and unpredictable. Let her go and another would arrive by Tuesday, with a different name and the same handbag. The role exists independently of the person filling it, which means there is no version of this where you simply take the bottle back. So you learn the rhythm. You learn when she'll say yes and when she'll say not yet, and you arrange your face accordingly. You become, without meaning to, a person who manages the person who manages you, a quiet daily negotiation conducted entirely in pleasantries. Miss Dabney snaps the handbag shut and tells you the car is ready. You go where she says, when she says, dosed to the exact brightness the day requires. She holds the bottle. You hold the smile. Between you, the two of you keep the asset running, and only one of you gets to decide when it rests. You are in the make-up chair before dawn, which means you were woken at 4, which means the pill has already done its job before most of the country has set an alarm. The lights around the mirror are hot enough to bake under. Hands you did not invite move across your face, painting on a version of you that photographs better than the real one. You sit still and let it happen, because the call sheet says the camera needs you ready by 7, and the camera does not care how you got there. Mr. Voss runs the makeup department, and he treats your face the way a restorer treats a slightly damaged painting. With respect, concern, and the faint disappointment of a man who can see exactly what time and chemistry have been doing to his materials. He tilts your chin toward the light with one finger, studies you, sighs the small professional sigh of a craftsman handed worse stock than last week, and reaches for the sponge. The first thing he covers is the truth. There are shadows under your eyes that a barbiturate and 4 hours of switched-off unconsciousness will reliably produce. And there is a particular grey tone the amphetamine leaves behind, the look of a person running on a battery that's charging slower than it drains. Mr. Voss knows all the signs. He's painted them out of 100 faces. He doesn't comment. Commenting is not in his job. And besides, what would he say that the mirror hasn't already? The chair at this hour is a strange confessional. You're too early to be properly defended. The pill bright in your blood, your real face still half asleep underneath the one being applied on top of it. The radio plays low. Somebody 2 chairs down is getting eyelashes glued on one at a time by a woman with the steady hands of a surgeon. Nobody talks much. It's too early and everyone knows too much. What's being built, layer by layer, is not a disguise exactly. It's a correction. The face the public adores is partly Mr. Voss's work, an act of daily maintenance performed before sunrise to keep the gap between the glamorous image and the exhausted original from showing on film. You are your own forgery, touched up each morning by a kind man with a sponge, and the original is kept carefully out of frame. The lights are merciless on purpose. They're meant to mimic the brutality of the set lights, so that nothing surprises the camera later. Sitting under them, you can feel the heat working at the makeup almost as fast as it goes on, which is its own quiet joke. A face being painted and slowly melted in the same chair, like a cake decorated in a sauna. You hold still. Holding still is the one thing being asked of you right now, and after the kind of life you lead, being asked to simply sit and do nothing for an hour ought to feel like a gift. It doesn't, because the pill won't let it. The pill wants you up, doing, talking, and here you are pinned to a chair, your blood racing while your body is forbidden to move, a engine revving in park. Mr. Voss steps back. He turns your chair toward the mirror with a small showman's flourish, and there you are, finished, luminous, ready. A person who clearly slept 8 hours and ate 3 meals and has never once heard of a yellow capsule. It's a beautiful piece of work. It's also, in every way that matters, a polite lie agreed upon by everyone in the room. He pats your shoulder and calls the next name. You rise from the chair wearing the face the day requires, leaving the other one behind in the mirror, where it will wait, patient and uncredited, until the makeup comes off again near midnight. Somewhere in the publicity building there is a version of your life that is more interesting than your actual life, and it is the version everyone believes. They changed your name before you finished unpacking. They invented a hometown, a hobby, a charming story about how you were discovered. You are handed this biography and expected to recite it, consistently, for years, to anyone who asks. The strange part is not that they made it up. The strange part is how quickly you start forgetting which parts were ever true. Mr. Kessler runs publicity, and he hands you the new you in a folder, the way a teacher hands back a graded paper. He flips it open and walks you through your own life as he has rewritten it, tapping each invented fact with his pen so you'll commit it to memory. You were discovered at a soda fountain, apparently. You love horseback riding, a thing you have never done. Your hometown has been moved 1,000 miles to somewhere that tests better with audiences. The name went first, decided in a meeting you weren't invited to. The one your family gave you tested poorly, too long, too ethnic, too hard on a marquee, and so it was retired and a brighter, blander one issued in its place, the way you'd swap out a light bulb. You answer to the new one now. You've answered to it long enough that your old name has begun to feel like a coat you left at someone else's house years ago and never went back for. The biography is engineered, every detail load-bearing. The soda fountain story makes fame feel like luck, which makes it feel possible, which sells tickets to every girl in every small town who buys the magazine. The horseback riding makes you wholesome. The relocated hometown makes you familiar. You are not a person being described. You are a product being positioned. And the folder in Mr. Kessler's hands is the label. What the biography never mentions, naturally, is the pill on the saucer. The official you sleeps soundly and rises refreshed and stays slim through good clean living and a sunny disposition. There is no studio doctor in the authorized version, no handbag, no yellow capsule. The whole document exists in part to paper precisely over the machinery that keeps the real you running, the way a freshly painted fence hides whatever the fence is keeping in. You recite it so often that the recitation wears a groove. A reporter asks how you were discovered and the soda fountain rolls out of you before you've decided to say it, smooth and warm and entirely false. This is the part that unsettles you in quiet moments. Not that they lied, but that you've become fluent in the lie, that you can no longer always feel the seam between what happened to you and what was written for you. Mr. Kessler is pleased with the work, the way a man is pleased with a tidy ledger. To him it isn't dishonest exactly, it's craft, the careful construction of a public person durable enough to survive years of interviews without contradicting itself. He has done this for dozens of stars. He could write a charming false childhood in his sleep. He probably has. The danger isn't the fibs about soda fountains. The danger is slower than that. When the people who control your career also control the story of who you are, you start to lose the thread of yourself, quietly, a little at a time, until the most reliable account of your own life is the one a man with a pen invented to sell magazines. You close the folder, you've got it memorized. You step out to meet the press as the person Mr. Kessler designed, fluent, consistent, beloved, and somewhere underneath, getting fainter, the one who actually grew up wherever you actually grew up, waits to be remembered by the one person left who might. You go to the studio commissary like everyone else, and you sit down to a meal that has already been decided for you. The cooks know your card. The studio knows your way-in. What arrives in front of you is not what you ordered, because you do not really order, you receive. For a star whose contract has opinions about her waistline, the meal is often a bowl of clear soup, a cup of black coffee, and the understanding that the cigarette afterward is doing most of the heavy lifting that food normally would. The commissary itself is a grand, busy and costumed room, full of cowboys eating beside Roman senators, eating beside chorus girls, the whole costumed population of the lot crowded together over lunch. The food is good. You can smell it, roast beef and gravy and warm bread, a whole menu of things the camera has decided you may not have. Smelling it is, in fact, the closest you'll get, and the smell is somehow part of the punishment, a feast staged just out of reach. Hazel runs the counter, and Hazel keeps the cards. She has a little wooden box of them, one per contract player, each noting what that body is permitted today. When you reach the front of the line, she doesn't ask what you'd like. She glances at your card, then at you, with the practiced sympathy of a woman who has handed a great many hungry, beautiful people a very small bowl of soup and she ladles out exactly what the box says, no more. The soup is clear on purpose. Clear soup is mostly the memory of food, warm water that once stood near a chicken, and its great virtue, from the studio's perspective, is that it fills the time of eating without committing the crime of nourishment. You stir it. You make it last, the way you'd nurse a single drink to seem sociable. Across the table, an extra dressed as a knight is working through a slab of pie, and you watch him do it the way a dieting saint watches a sinner. The black coffee is the real meal, and everyone knows it. It pairs neatly with the morning pill, two stimulants shaking hands, doubling the message to your appetite that the kitchen is closed. Between the coffee and the Benzedrine, hunger has mostly stopped sending letters. You aren't starving in the way a body starves on its own. You're starving in a managed, professional way, your appetite switched off upstairs so that the not eating barely registers as suffering. Then the cigarette, which is the third leg of the stool, it gives your hands something to do, gives your mouth something to do, and pushes the next thought of food another half hour down the road. This is the actual diet, when you write it out honestly. Soup, coffee, smoke, and a pill. It would horrify a nutritionist, and it delights a studio accountant, because a thin star is a bankable star, and the camera was always the only diner whose opinion counted. Hazel slips you a soda cracker sometimes, when no one's looking, a tiny act of mutiny pressed into your palm with a quick flat look that says eat it before someone sees. She isn't supposed to. The card doesn't allow it. But Hazel has watched this room long enough to develop opinions about what it does to the people who pass through her line, and the cracker is the only argument she's permitted to make. You finish the soup that was never going to fill you. You stub out the cigarette that did the work the soup couldn't. The card goes back in the box, ready for tomorrow, when it will say the same thing it said today. You stand, light-headed and famous, and walk back toward the stage past the smell of everyone else's lunch. The card is satisfied. The scale will be satisfied on Monday. Only your body, somewhere far below the reach of either, keeps quietly filing its complaint. On a rare day off, you walk into an ordinary drugstore, and you buy the same drug the studio gives you, off the shelf, no questions asked. It is sold as a nasal inhaler for a stuffy nose, a little tube sitting near the cough drops and the throat lozenges. You hand over your coins, nobody blinks. What you have just purchased, legally and casually, is a folded paper strip soaked in a dose of amphetamine that would alarm the very studio doctor who hands you pills all week long. The drugstore is the most innocent room in America. There's a soda fountain up front, a wall of patent remedies, a rack of magazines with your own painted face on two of them. And there, between the menthol rub and the cough syrup, sits the Benzedrine inhaler, made by Smith, Klein and French, marketed cheerfully for congestion, available to absolutely anyone with a few cents and a nose. It's the rough equivalent of a CVS ringing up amphetamine beside the cough drops because your nose is a little stuffy, decades before anyone thought that might be a problem. Eddie behind the counter rings it up alongside a comic book and a cherry phosphate for the kid next to you. The same casual transaction, the same friendly nod. To Eddie it's a decongestant. To Eddie it's no more remarkable than aspirin. He has no idea that the small, cheap and cardboard tube he just slid across the counter contains, by some accounts, around 325 milligrams of amphetamine, many times over what a person would ever take on purpose for fun, folded up inside like a secret the manufacturer didn't think to keep. Because here's the open trick, the one the college students and the truck drivers and the jazz men all figured out within about a week of the thing going on sale. You're not actually meant to sniff it for very long. You're meant to crack the tube open, fish out the soaked paper strip, and swallow it or drop it into a cup of coffee. Or, more ambitiously, into something stronger. One innocent nose tube becomes a night's worth of relentless wakefulness, purchased for pocket change, beside the throat lozenges. You know all this because everyone in your line of work knows it. The inhaler is the unofficial supply, the version you control, the one that doesn't have to go through Miss Dabney's handbag or get noted on Dr. Ainsley's little card. On a day when you want the brightness without the supervision, the corner drugstore is happy to oblige. No chaperone, no clipboard, no one to say not yet. The sheer ordinariness of it is the part that should frighten somebody and frightens no one. There is no warning label worth the name. There's no lock, no log, no age, no pharmacist's frown. A drug powerful enough to keep a teenager working 72 hours is sold with less ceremony than a bottle of aspirin displayed at child height, advertised in the very magazines that print your invented biography 2 pages over. You tuck the tube into your coat pocket, next to nothing in particular, and step back out into your one free afternoon. You feel briefly, strangely powerful the way anyone feels holding a thing far stronger than its packaging admits. You also feel a little sick, in a way you don't examine too closely, at how easy that was, how the same chemistry that's quietly taking your life apart can be restocked at the same counter that sells Valentines. Eddie waves as you go, friendly as ever, already turning to the next customer, an old woman with a genuinely stuffy nose who will use the thing exactly as intended and never know what she missed. The bell over the door rings. The most dangerous purchase of your week cost less than lunch, and lunch, lately, you don't even eat. Buried in your contract is a clause about your behaviour, and it is broad enough to cover almost anything you might do while being a human being. It says you will not embarrass the studio. It does not define embarrass. That word is left wide open on purpose, so that whatever you do, wherever you go, whoever you are seen with, can be measured against a standard nobody will tell you in advance. You live your private life knowing that the studio considers your private life one of its assets, and damaged assets get handled. The man who handles them is Mr. Strang, and you have learned to feel a small drop in your stomach when his name comes up. He's the fixer, the studio's quiet problem solver, a calm, heavy and unhurried man in a good suit who arrives after the trouble and makes the trouble disappear. Car accident at 3 o'clock. In the dark. A romance the studio didn't arrange. A photograph that should never have been taken. Mr. Strang has handled all of it for people far more famous than you, and he never raises his voice while doing it. The morality clause is the leash that gives him his authority. Because the word embarrass means whatever the studio decides it means, you are never quite sure where the edge of acceptable is until you've stepped over it. It's a fence you can't see, and the only way to learn its location is to be retrieved by Mr. Strang from the wrong side of it. Most people learn fast. Most people learn once. The genuinely strange part is what the clause does and doesn't notice. The pills are fine. The studio doctor, the handbag, the yellow capsule, the whole chemical scaffolding holding you upright, none of that embarrasses anyone because the public never sees it and the studio arranged it. But fall in love with the wrong person, say the wrong thing to the wrong reporter, be photographed looking tired and human in the wrong doorway, and suddenly your morality is the topic of an urgent meeting. The clause polices the appearance of virtue, not the substance, and the appearance is the only part that sells. So you self-edit, constantly, in ways you barely notice anymore. You think twice about a restaurant. You think twice about a friend. You arrange your face before you leave the house, because a famous face in a public place is always potentially evidence. The leash isn't really in Mr. Strang's hand at all. He only shows up when it fails. The leash is in your own head, where the studio installed it free of charge the day you signed. Mr. Strang, to be fair, is good company when he isn't working. He'll buy you a coffee, ask after your mother, tell a funny story about an actor whose scandal he buried in 1934. He treats you decently right up until the moment you become a problem, at which point the warmth doesn't vanish exactly, it just gets very efficient. He's the velvet glove the studio keeps in a drawer, and you are always, quietly, aware of the hand inside it. What it adds up to is a private life that isn't private, and a morality that isn't yours. The studio owns your conduct the way it owns your name and your weight. Another clause, another asset, another thing about you that someone else gets the final say on. You are permitted to be a person, technically, as long as the person never embarrasses the corporation, which is a bit like being permitted to swim as long as you stay dry. Mr. Strang tips his hat and tells you to enjoy your evening, and you understand the instruction underneath the pleasantry. Enjoy it carefully. Enjoy it where it can't be photographed. Enjoy it within the lines of a clause you've never been allowed to read in full, drawn by people who profit from your good behaviour and have a man on call for when it slips. One morning you are told you will be working somewhere else for a while, and you had no say in it because you were rented. Your studio has loaned you to a rival studio for a picture, the way a person lends a neighbour a ladder. The rival pays your studio more than your studio pays you, and you see none of the difference. You pack up, report to an unfamiliar lot with unfamiliar people, and do the work, all while remaining, on paper, the property of an employer who is currently making money by not having you around. The word for it is a loan out, which is a friendly little term for being leased like equipment. Your studio has discovered that you are worth more to them rented than used, that another lot will pay a handsome weekly fee for your face, and that the fee minus your fixed salary is a tidy profit they pocket simply for owning you. You are, this month, a revenue stream wearing a hat. Somewhere an accountant is very pleased with you, in a way that has nothing to do with your acting. You report to the rival lot, and it's the same loud, bright and hurried circus with different tents. Different gate, different commissary, different painted faces hurrying to different stages, but the same arc lamps, the same brutal call sheet, the same windowless box where it's always still today. The assistant director here is a man named Mr. Forsyth, who runs his set exactly like the one you left, clipboard held like a wheel, time bent to the budget, the human limit treated as a rumour. And here is the detail that tells you everything. You brought the bottle with you. Wherever you go, the schedule goes, and wherever the schedule goes, the pills go, because nobody delivers these hours unaided, and every lot in town has quietly agreed to the same arrangement. The borrowed star arrives pre-supplied. Mr. Forsyth doesn't have to dose you. You came dosed, your own little chemical luggage, ready to keep working under a new logo without a single day of adjustment. The strangeness of being rented is how it clarifies what you are. At your home studio, surrounded by the people who renamed you and invented your childhood, it's possible to half believe you're part of a family, a valued member of a team. Out here, on loan, the fiction thins. You're a piece of inventory that's been checked out, used, and will be checked back in, and the warmth of the family vanishes the instant you cross into territory where the family doesn't own the lease. You do good work, because you always do good work, because the bottle and the training and the fear see to it. The rival studio is delighted with their rental. They get a real star for a few weeks, no long-term obligation, no need to have discovered you or developed you or fed you soup for 3 years. They return you in good condition, and your home studio counts the profit, and you go back through your own gate exactly as you left, a little more tired, not $1 richer. The money is the part that stings if you let it, so mostly you don't let it. The difference between what the rival paid and what you earned is real and large, and entirely none of your business, by contract. You generated it. You will never touch it. You are the goose, the egg, and the only party in the transaction not invited to breakfast, Mr. Forsyth shakes your hand on the last day and says it was a pleasure, and he means it, because you were no trouble at all, which is the highest praise a rented thing can earn. You pack up again. The bottle goes in the same bag it came in. You head back to the studio that owns you, to resume being profitable in the usual way, having spent a month proving you're worth even more than they pay you, a fact they already knew and you are not permitted to mention. After the day's filming, there is still the photographer, and you go to him because the publicity machine needs pictures, hundreds of them, more than any one person could ever use. You hold a pose. You hold it longer. You hold a smile that has stopped meaning anything to the muscles producing it. The flash goes and goes. The energy keeping your chin up and your eyes bright is not coming from a good night's rest or a nourishing meal, and everyone in the room knows exactly where it is coming from, and nobody says so. Mr. Bricker shoots the stills, and Mr. Bricker is an artist, which means he is never finished. He circles you with his camera, ducking and rising, murmuring chin down, eyes up. Now, give me the one where you're thinking of someone you love, as though you have anyone left awake in your life to think of. He adjusts a light, a fraction of an inch. He shoots. He adjusts it back. The session has no natural end, only the point at which the film runs out or you do. The still photograph is its own peculiar tyranny, because a still has nowhere to hide. In a moving scene, a tired moment passes in a blink. A still holds forever, which means every shadow, every slackness, every flicker of the exhaustion underneath gets a permanent record, unless you actively perform vitality into the lens, frame after frame after frame. So you do. You manufacture sparkle on demand, an engine of charm idling in a chair, and the engine, as ever, runs on the bottle. The pose is the cruel part. You hold your arms just so, your spine arched into a line a body doesn't naturally make, your face arranged into delight, and you hold it, while Mr. Bricker chases the perfect version somewhere in the air around you. Your muscles begin to tremble in tiny private earthquakes the camera won't see. Your face aches from smiling. This is glamour from the inside, which turns out to be mostly the discomfort of staying beautiful longer than any human being should have to. The pictures pour out of these sessions in numbers that defy reason. Far more than the magazines could print, more than the fan letters could answer, a flood of you, all of it carefully curated to show a person who is rested, joyful, and unmanaged. Each frame is a small advertisement for a life you are not living, signed, eventually, by a machine, and mailed to strangers who will keep it on a dresser and believe it. What keeps you upright in the chair is the same thing that keeps you upright everywhere, the borrowed brightness with the bill attached. By this hour, after a full shooting day, the natural human in you would be unconscious. The pill keeps her standing, posing, sparkling, several feet past where she should have collapsed, which is precisely why the studio likes the pill. It extends the working surface of a person well beyond the factory limit. Mr. Bricker finally lowers the camera, and the lowering is the only mercy in the room. He looks at you with real fondness and tells you that you were wonderful, that some of these will be beautiful, and he isn't lying. Some of them will be, people will frame them. No one looking will ever guess what the eyes cost, or how the smile was financed, or that the radiant girl in the silver frame went straight from that chair to a car to a yellow capsule on a saucer. You let your face fall, finally, the smile sliding off like a coat. The trembling in your arms eases. Somewhere 1,000 perfect images of you are being developed in the dark, each one brighter and better rested than the woman who made them, each one ready to outlive the long, strange day that produced it. The musical number is the part that breaks people, and you are about to do it again. The director wants it perfect, which means flawless, which means the same complicated routine repeated until something invisible finally satisfies him. Your feet are past sore, the lights are past hot, you have lost count of the takes somewhere in the 30s. There is no version of this where your real body, rested and fed, could keep dancing at full brightness for this long. So the version of you that keeps dancing has been chemically arranged in advance. Mr. Lasky is the dance director, and Mr. Lasky hears music nobody else can hear, a perfect version of the number playing in his head against which every living attempt falls slightly short. He stands at the edge of the set with his arms folded, and when the take ends, he doesn't say bad, he says again that flat single word, and the whole apparatus resets. The cameras, the lights, the orchestra, and you, always, you, back to your first mark to do all of it once more. A dance number is the cruelest thing the studio can ask of a body, because it asks for athletic endurance and the appearance of weightless joy at the same time. You must leap and spin and land and never let the effort show, must look, on the 40th attempt, exactly as fresh and delighted as you looked on the first, when in truth your lungs are burning and your stockings have worn through and something in your left ankle has begun composing a strongly worded letter. The smile is mandatory throughout. That's the part that astonishes you even now. You can be in genuine pain, drenched, dizzy, and shaking, your hair plastered to your neck, your heart slamming in a way that has more to do with the pill than the dance. And the one thing you may never do is let the joy slip. The audience must believe this was effortless. Effortless is the entire product. The labour must be invisible, scrubbed out frame by frame, smiled over until it disappears. The pill is what makes the 40th take physically possible, and that is not a small thing. It is the hinge the whole number turns on. Somewhere back at take 12, your natural energy ran out, quietly, without ceremony. Everything since has been borrowed, the leaps powered by chemistry, the smile held up by a stimulant, the endurance purchased rather than possessed. Mr. Lasky's impossible standard and your impossible stamina were reconciled long before the cameras rolled by a pill neither of you will mention on the floor. You think sometimes about who actually pays for perfection, and the answer is always the same. Not Mr. Lasky, who only has to hear it, not the audience, who only has to enjoy it. You pay for it, in ankle and lung and a heart asked to gallop for hours, in the slow accumulating damage of doing a hard thing 40 times when the body had a much smaller number in mind. The perfection lives forever on film. The cost lives in you, Mr. Lasky calls again, and the orchestra strikes up, and you find your mark, and you become weightless and delighted on command. The worn stockings and the burning lungs and the borrowed brightness, all folded neatly behind a smile that the camera reads as bliss. You leap, you land, you sparkle. The number is, this time, very nearly the one he hears in his head. He watches, head tilted, listening to the gap between his music and yours, and for a long moment you don't breathe, hovering in the silence where again lives. Then he unfolds his arms, gives a small nod, and says print. And the relief that floods through you is so total it nearly takes your legs out from under you. You did it. 40 times. The audience will think it was easy. That, in the end, is the job. Tonight there is a premiere, and you will be radiant at it, because radiant is in the contract. You finished shooting a few hours ago on almost no sleep, and now you are stepping out of a car into a wall of flashbulbs, expected to glow, to charm, to look like a person who naps and eats and is loved. You wave, you laugh at the right moments. The brightness the crowd reads as glamour is the same brightness a pill produces about 40 minutes after you take it, and you took it in the car. The premiere is a machine for producing one specific image, the radiant arrival, and you are tonight's part. Searchlights rake the sky over the theatre. A crowd presses against the ropes, screaming a name a publicist gave you, holding autograph books and your face on the cover of magazines. You step from the car into a storm of flashbulbs so bright and so constant that the world strobes, and you smile into the whiteout as though this is the happiest moment of a happy life. 40 minutes ago, in the back of the car, you took the pill, timed precisely so it would peak as the door opened. This is choreography as careful as any dance number. Miss Dabney checked her watch, handed it to you, watched you take it, and then fixed your lipstick while the chemistry came up, so that you would crest the curb at exactly the moment the rented glow hit its stride. You are not arriving. You are being released, on cue, at full sparkle. The glamour, seen from inside, is a peculiar thing. Your body finished a 14-hour day a short while ago and would, left alone, be face down and unconscious right now. Instead, it is upright in a gown, glittering, gracious, working a crowd, because the pill has overruled the body's strong and reasonable objection. What the world calls star quality is, in this exact moment, mostly the chemical postponement of a collapse that is already overdue. A reporter named Mr. Hollis catches you on the carpet and asks how you do it, how you stay so luminous, so full of life, and you laugh your warm invented laugh and tell him clean living and a good night's sleep. And he writes it down, and the lie goes into print to inspire the exhausted housewives of the nation. He's standing 2 feet from the truth and can't see it because the truth has been professionally lit, painted, dressed, and dosed to be invisible at exactly this distance. Inside, you sit in the dark and watch yourself on the enormous screen, a 40-foot version of a person who looks effortless and rested and free. It's a strange thing to do, to sit exhausted in a velvet seat watching a giant glowing copy of yourself enjoy a life you don't recognize. The audience around you sighs and laughs and falls a little in love with the giant. You, the small original in seat 14, just try to keep your eyes open until the lights come up. The danger of the night isn't the night itself, it's the lesson it teaches the country. Every radiant premiere arrival tells a million people that this is what success looks like, that the beautiful and the famous are simply more alive than the rest, glowing naturally, tirelessly, on nothing but talent and joy. Nobody mentions the car, the watch, the timing, the pill. The image is the whole point, and the image is a magnificent, well-lit, fraudulently rested lie. The lights come up. You rise, you glow, you let the crowd love the version of you the pill is currently powering, and you hold it together all the way back to the car. Only when the door shuts and the glass goes dark do you let your shoulders drop, the smile finally sliding off, the borrowed brightness already beginning, faintly, to ask for what it lent you back. The nurse calls it a vitamin shot, and you let her, because by now you have decided not to ask questions you already know the answers to. She comes to your dressing room with a small case, swabs your arm, and gives you something that makes the next several hours possible. It is described as energy, as wellness, as a little boost the busy stars all get. It is not a vitamin. You understand it is not a vitamin. The polite fiction is part of the dose, and you swallow that part too. The nurse is back, the same Miss Pruitt from the doctor's office, except in your dressing room she's softer, more confiding, a friend stopping by with a gift rather than a clinician with a syringe. She sets her little case on the vanity and opens it with a practiced click. Inside, in neat foam slots, sit the small glass ampoules that hold whatever this is, lined up like expensive perfume samples, glinting under the bulbs that ring your mirror. Vitamin shot is a beautiful piece of language, when you think about it, And you have time to think about it while she taps the bubbles out of the needle. It sounds wholesome. It sounds like something a mother would approve of. It carries no warning, demands no questions, and lets everyone in the room participate in your dosing while pretending it's a tonic. The wrong word, given to the right person at the right moment, is itself a kind of medicine, and the studio dispenses it as freely as the contents of the ampule. You know what it is. Of course you know. You've felt this exact lift before, from the pill, from the inhaler, the unmistakable arrival of the loaned energy, except a shot is faster and harder, a stimulant delivered straight past every gate your stomach might have put up. There is no slow climb here. There is a flat surface and then, abruptly, a summit, and you're standing on it, blinking, suddenly equal to the impossible afternoon ahead. The euphemism does real work, and that's why it exists. Calling it a vitamin keeps you compliant, keeps the conversation pleasant, keeps anyone from having to say out loud that a young performer is being injected with amphetamine on a film set so the production can stay on schedule. It also keeps the studio's hands clean. Nobody drugged anyone. A nurse gave a star a little something for her energy. The sentence is true and means nothing, and protects everyone except the person with the swab on her arm. Miss Pruitt finds the vein with the gentleness of long practice, and there's a small sting, and then she's pressing a cotton ball into the crook of your elbow and telling you to hold it there, dear, just for a minute. She's kind. She's genuinely kind, which is the disorienting thing about every person in this machine. The way the cruelty arrives wrapped in real tenderness. The needle delivered by someone who remembers how you take your coffee. The lift comes up fast and you ride it, and for the length of the afternoon you'll be grateful for it, which is the worst part. The gratitude. You will get more done. You will feel briefly wonderful. You will forget, for a few good hours, the slow arithmetic of what this is doing to the heart that's currently working so hard on your behalf. The shot doesn't feel like harm. It feels like rescue. That's exactly how it keeps working. Miss Pruitt snaps the case shut, drops the empty ampule into a little tin, and tells you to have a wonderful afternoon, sweetheart, as if she's handed you a bouquet. She has other dressing rooms to visit, other arms, other vitamins. The door closes softly behind her. You hold the cotton ball in the crook of your elbow and feel the summit arrive, bright, chemical, and welcome. And you decide once again not to ask the question whose answer is already humming in your blood. It was a vitamin shot. Everyone agreed. That's how the word does its job. There are sacks of letters addressed to you, and you have read almost none of them, because the answering of them is a department, not a chore. People write to the version of you the studio invented, pouring out love and questions and marriage proposals, and a room full of clerks writes back in your voice, signs your name with a stamp, and sends a photograph that a machine signed too. You are the most personally beloved you will ever be, by thousands of people, through correspondence you have never personally touched. The fan mail department is a real room, with real desks, where Mrs. Ferro presides over the daily flood. She's been answering letters in famous people's voices for years, and she can produce your warmth on paper better than you could on a good day, because she's never tired and never dosed and never sick of being adored. She slits the envelopes with a little bone knife, sorts the contents into piles only she understands, and dictates replies that sound exactly like the you that doesn't exist. The letters themselves would break your heart if you read them, which is one reason you don't. People tell you things. A girl in Ohio writes that your last picture got her through the worst month of her life. A soldier writes that your photograph is taped inside his footlocker. A lonely man writes a marriage proposal, sincere, misdirected, and hopeless, that sits in Mrs. Ferro's pile marked simply gentle no. They are writing to a friend they feel they have. The friend is a committee. Your signature has been industrialized. There's a machine, an auto pen, that holds a real pen and reproduces your name in your own handwriting, over and over, on photograph after photograph, so that the thing a fan treasures as proof you held their letter was in fact produced by a contraption that has never met you. The intimacy is a product, stamped out by the gross, mailed to addresses you'll never see. There's a brutal efficiency to it that you can't help admiring even as it unsettles you. The studio understands that the love of strangers is an asset to be managed, like your weight or your name, and that managed love scales in a way real love never could, the McDonald's of devotion. Real you could answer maybe 10 letters a day, exhausted, in a shaking hand, between pills. Committee you answers 1,000, cheerfully, forever, in a voice that never wavers because it was never alive. The loneliest part is the math. There are thousands of people out there who genuinely love you, who have wept at your pictures and pinned up your face and written you their secrets, and you have a relationship with not one of them. The love is entirely real on their end and entirely staffed on yours. You are surrounded, drowning, in an affection you can't actually receive, because receiving it was assigned to Mrs. Farrow and her bone knife 3 floors down. Now and then you do read one, when a letter slips through or someone hands you a particularly sweet one to glance at, and it lands strangely, like overhearing someone describe a person you used to be. The warmth is meant for the invented you, the soda fountain you, the rested glowing you of the autographed stills. The actual you, tired and chemical and underfed, reads it like mail delivered to a previous tenant, Mrs. Farrow asks if you'd like to sign a few yourself today, a real signature for the special ones, and sometimes you do, a dozen by hand, your name in your own ink at last, and it feels oddly like visiting your own grave to leave flowers. Then the auto pen takes over again, tireless, and the piles go out, and somewhere a girl in Ohio receives proof that you care, manufactured with love by a woman she'll never know existed. The sacks arrive again tomorrow, fuller than today. The love keeps coming, the department keeps answering, and you remain, in the strangest way, both the most cherished person in 1,000 homes and a stranger to every single one of them. There are 2 women in this town who can end you with a paragraph, and tonight one of them is at the party, so you go and you are charming. The gossip columnist holds more real power over your career than most of the men who direct you, because she decides what millions of readers believe about your private life. You greet her warmly, you feed her a small, harmless secret so she does not go hunting for a real one. You do all of this on a few hours of sleep and a chemical sense of confidence you did not wake up with. The 2 women are Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, and between them they own the morning. Tens of millions of people read their columns, and what those readers think about you, whether you are sweet or difficult, faithful or fast, rising or finished, is decided in print by these 2 and absorbed by the country as simple fact. A studio can build you for years. A columnist can dismantle you over breakfast. Everyone in this room knows the arithmetic, which is why everyone in this room is being so very pleasant. Tonight it's Hedda, identifiable from across the garden by a hat the approximate size of a satellite dish, arriving at the party several seconds before the rest of her does. You watch the room rearrange itself around her path, stars peeling off conversations to pay tribute, everyone suddenly delighted, everyone suddenly available. You drift into the current and let it carry you toward her, your smile already assembled, your charm already drawing on the bottle for the strength to seem at ease. The trick, which you've learned the hard way, is to feed her. A columnist who leaves a party empty-handed goes looking, and a columnist who goes looking finds things, and the things she finds are rarely the things you'd choose. So you bring her a gift, a small, true and harmless morsel, a sweet remark about a co-star, a hint about a role you're hoping for, something she can print that costs you nothing and lets her file a column. You hand over the little secret like a zookeeper sliding meat through the bars, smiling, careful of your fingers. The whole exchange is conducted on borrowed nerve. By this hour, your natural confidence has been spent down to nothing, and the ease you're projecting, the relaxed laugh, the steady eye, the unbothered grace under the gaze of a woman who could ruin you, is being underwritten by the same chemistry that gets you through everything else. You are, in a real sense, charming her on credit, and the bill, as always, is being quietly logged somewhere south of your good cheer. Hedda takes your morsel, files it behind her eyes, and gives you a long, appraising look over the brim of the enormous hat, the look of a woman deciding, in real time, whether you're worth being kind to this season. You hold the look. You don't flinch. Flinching is information, and she collects information the way other people collect stamps. The pill helps you not flinch, which is perhaps the smallest and saddest favour it does you all day. What makes it grotesque is the inversion of power. You are the one whose face fills theatres, whose name is on the marquee, and yet here you are performing for a woman in a hat, managing her, flattering her, terrified of her, because she controls the one thing the studio can't fully buy, which is what the public chooses to believe. Fame, it turns out, doesn't make you powerful. It makes you exposed. And the columnists are the weather. She finally smiles, pleased enough, and moves on toward her next tribute, the hat leading the way like a barge. You exhale. You survived Hedda, which means you'll likely survive the morning papers, which means the season can continue. You collect a glass you won't drink and let the borrowed confidence ebb, knowing the other one, Luella, is out there somewhere too, and that this particular performance is one you'll be giving for as long as you remain worth writing about. Before any of this, there was a screen test, and you remember it as the day your life changed, which it did, though not in the direction you imagined. You stood on a mark under lights, said lines to a camera, and a room full of strangers decided your face was worth money. They offered you a contract that afternoon. You signed it that week. Nobody mentioned the schedule, the diet, the doctor, or the small white pill, because those come later, after the ink is dry and the test footage is already being filed away. You were so young. That's the thing you keep returning to, the sheer unguarded youth of the girl on that mark. You'd come a long way on a bus with a cardboard suitcase and a dream stitched together out of the very pictures this studio made. The lights were hotter than you expected, the camera was bigger, and the men behind it watched you with a flat, assessing, and patient stillness that you mistook, in your nervousness, for disapproval, when in fact they were simply pricing you. Mr. Auerbach ran the test, a tired, courteous man who had discovered and used up 100 faces before yours. He positioned you with a hand on each shoulder, told you where to look, fed you the lines, and then stepped back behind the lens to study what the camera made of you. He developed, over the years, an instinct for the particular quality that reads on film, the thing that can't be taught and can't be faked, and when he saw it in you, he didn't smile. He just made a small note and called for the next setup, and your whole future turned on a notation you never saw. What they were looking for wasn't talent, exactly, and it certainly wasn't your happiness. They were looking for sellability, for a face that would make strangers in the dark feel something and then buy a ticket to feel it again. You had it. That was your good fortune and, though no one told you so, your sentence. The same quality that won you the contract made you valuable, and valuable, in this town, means worth running until you stop. The contract came that afternoon, presented as a miracle, which it genuinely felt like. They offered you the world, a salary larger than your father had ever earned, a new name, a future on screens across the country, and they offered it warmly, generously, with a fountain pen already uncapped. You'd have signed anything. They knew you'd have signed anything. That, too, is part of the test, the part that measures not your face but your need. Nobody, on that bright afternoon, mentioned the back of the deal. No one said you'd be woken at 4 and dosed at dawn, weighed on Mondays, fed soup, kept upright by a bottle, owned for 7 years, and lent out for profit. Those terms exist, they're real, they're coming, but they aren't on the menu the day you sign, because the day you sign is for selling the dream, and the dream sells better without a list of its ingredients. You remember walking out of the test stage into the California sun feeling chosen, feeling that everything sad and small in your life was finally behind you. And in a way it was. A different set of sad and small things was waiting up ahead, dressed in silk, lit beautifully, but you couldn't see them yet, and the people who could see them perfectly were the ones shaking your hand and telling you that you were going to be a very, very big star. The test footage went into a vault, a few feet of film showing a nervous, luminous girl who didn't yet know what she'd agreed to. It's still there, probably, somewhere in the studio's archive, the last record of you before the schedule began, before the first pill, before the brightness started coming from a bottle. You stood on the mark. You said the lines. You were perfect. That was the trouble. You stand on a small platform while people circle you with pins, and you do not move, because moving is not your part of this. The wardrobe department is fitting you into a costume cut for a body that weighs what the studio has decided you should weigh, not necessarily what you currently weigh. The measurements get written down. If the numbers and the costume disagree, it is understood that the costume is correct and your body is the problem to be solved, quickly, by the usual methods, before the camera ever sees the seam. Miss Lindquist runs the fitting, and she has a mouthful of pins and the unsentimental eye of a sculptor working in fabric and flesh. She circles you slowly, tugging here, pinching there, talking around the pins in short-clipped instructions. Turn. Lift your arm, breathe out, and hold it. Her hands are cool, quick, and impersonal. To Miss Lindquist, you are not a person being dressed. You are a form being upholstered, and she has a deadline. The costume was cut to a number, and the number is the studio's, not your body's. Somewhere, a card recorded what you are supposed to weigh, and the gown was built to that fiction, so that when reality and the gown disagree, as they do today by an inch, the camera would forgive, but the studio won't. The disagreement is filed under your fault. The garment doesn't get let out. You get taken in. The costume is treated as the truth, and you as a draft of it that needs another edit. This is how the weigh-in and the pills and the soup all come home to roost, on the platform, with the pins. Miss Lindquist murmurs that it's a touch snug through the waist, just a touch, and you both understand exactly what that sentence sets in motion. Tighter diet. More of the bottle. A few days of soup and smoke and chemical appetite suppression, so that by the time the cameras roll, the seam lies flat and the fiction holds. The dress has, in effect, written you a prescription. Standing still is its own small ordeal, and not the gentle kind. The pill in your blood wants you up and moving, and here you are pinned in place, forbidden to fidget, while your heart races against the enforced stillness like a dog tied outside a shop. You hold your arms out. You breathe when told. You become a mannequin with a pulse, magnificently dressed, internally sprinting, smiling at the middle distance because that's the least troublesome thing to do with your face. The costume itself is a marvel and a cage, often both at once. It will look exquisite on screen, will make audiences sigh, will sell the fantasy beautifully. It also frequently restricts your breathing, pins your posture, and reminds you with every shallow inhale that beauty here is structural, engineered, and not especially concerned with whether the woman inside it can fully fill her lungs. You'll wear it for 14 hours tomorrow, you'll dance in it, if Mr. Lasky requires. The dress doesn't care, and neither particularly does anyone above Miss Lindquist. What strikes you, pinned and still, is the order of priorities the platform reveals. The costume is real, fixed, authoritative. Your body is provisional, adjustable, the variable to be solved. In any sane arrangement, the cloth would serve the person. Here the person serves the cloth and is medicated and starved into agreement with it, and calls the result, when the seam finally lies flat, looking wonderful. Miss Lindquist takes the last pin from her mouth, sets it, and steps back to survey her work with a sculptor's narrowed eye. She nods, once, satisfied. The gown sits correctly now, or will once you've done your part with the soup and the bottle. She helps you down off the platform with an impersonal hand, already turning toward the next form on the rack, and you carry the dress's quiet prescription out the door, another number to meet, another inch to disappear, before the camera sees the seam. You are famous, your face sells tickets across the country, and you have surprisingly little idea where your money is. The studio sets your salary, the studio caps your salary, and the studio decides when and whether to raise it. Your earnings move through people who manage them on your behalf, into accounts you are told about rather than shown. You are the product that generates the fortune, and you are also, somehow, the person in the room with the least control over the fortune, asking for an advance on money that the public assumes you are swimming in. Mr. Reuben handles your finances, a soft-spoken man with clean cuffs and a leather folder he opens like a priest opening a missal. He explains your money to you in a gentle, pitying, and practiced tone, the tone of a man explaining the ocean to a fish. There are deductions, he says. There are arrangements. There are things set aside, things held back, things managed for your own protection, and at the end of his explanation you understand less than when he started, which you have come to suspect is the intended outcome. The salary itself is fixed by the contract, which means fixed by the studio, which means you earn what they decided you'd earn back when you'd have signed for anything. Meanwhile, the rival lots pay handsomely to rent you, the theatres fill, the magazines sell, and the river of money your face generates flows past you in both directions without ever quite stopping at your dock. You just can't seem to get a cup of it without asking. And you do ask, which is the genuinely absurd part. You, whose smile sells 1 million tickets, periodically have to go to Mr. Reuben and request an advance, like a child asking for next week's allowance early, on money you earned, and that exists, and that is, in some technical sense, yours. He considers the request. He frowns thoughtfully. He grants it, usually, with the air of a man doing you a great kindness, and you leave feeling obscurely grateful for access to your own wages. The pills cost you nothing, which is its own quiet trap. The bottle is free, the doctor is free, the vitamin shot is free. all of it absorbed by the studio as a cost of production, never itemized, never charged. So the one part of your life that is generously, limitlessly provided is the part slowly killing you, while the money you earned and might actually use to leave is the part kept just out of reach. The machine gives away the leash and meters the exit. You were raised to believe money meant freedom, that if you ever had enough, you'd be safe, and you have, on paper, more than your whole family ever dreamed of. Yet here you are, more controlled than you were when you were poor, because the money isn't in your hands, it's in the systems. And the system has learned that a star who can't easily reach her own fortune is a star who can't easily walk away from it. Wealth, arranged like this, is just another wall with your name painted on it. Mr. Reuben closes the leather folder, satisfied that you've been informed, which you have, into thorough confusion. He assures you everything is being handled, that you needn't worry your head about figures, that this is precisely what he's for. He's pleasant, he's probably even honest, in the narrow legal way the men in this town are honest. He simply works, like everyone else who touches your life, for the people who own you rather than for you. You walk out with your small approved advance, famous and broke in the strangest sense of the word, surrounded by a fortune you generated and can't hold. The public pictures you in furs, careless with cash, lighting cigars with the stuff. The truth is a soft-spoken man with clean cuffs, a folder you can't read, and a daily reminder that the most valuable thing in the building is also the thing with the least say over what it's worth. A journalist is coming, and before he arrives, you are given the answers. The publicity department hands you the version of yourself you are to present today, the anecdotes, the opinions, the charming little flaws that make you relatable without making you real. You sit across from the journalist and perform spontaneity. You laugh as though the question surprised you. The whole exchange is a small play with two actors, one of whom thinks he is a reporter, and you carry your half of it on stimulants and a script you memorized in the car. A publicity man, one of Mr. Kessler's people, sits in the corner throughout, quiet, smiling, a chaperone for the conversation. He's there to keep things on the rails, to redirect a question that strays, to laugh first at the line you're meant to deliver so the reporter knows to write it down as charming. You are never interviewed alone. The presence in the corner is the whole point, a gentle reminder that this is a managed event and that everything you say is being heard twice, once by the journalist and once by the studio. The reporter, Mr. Pratt, is a decent enough man doing his job, and his job is to come away with a piece that confirms what readers already believe about you. He asks the expected questions. You give the prepared answers, the soda fountain, the horseback riding you've never done, the funny little anecdote about forgetting your lines that the department workshopped to make you seem humble. He writes it all down, pleased, getting exactly the interview he came for, which is the same interview everyone gets. The craft of it is making the rehearse sound spontaneous, and you've become frighteningly good at this, because it's the same skill the camera pays you for. You let a prepared anecdote arrive as if it just occurred to you. You pause as though searching for a word you settled on yesterday. You laugh at his question a half-second before answering, a small performance of being caught delightfully off guard by a query you saw coming a mile away. Spontaneity, it turns out, is the most heavily rehearsed thing you do. Underneath, the pill is holding you together, as it holds everything together. By the time Mr. Pratt arrives, you've already put in hours, and the warmth you're radiating across the little table, the brightness, the quick wit, the easy laugh, is being financed the usual way. A genuine person, this tired, would be flat and slow and honest. The chemical version is sparkling, careful and false, which is precisely the version that gives good copy. What's strange is how the lies are all small and the truth is never asked for. Mr. Pratt doesn't ask what time you woke. He doesn't ask what you ate or didn't. He doesn't ask about the bottle, the doctor, the handbag, the shot. Not because he's forbidden, exactly, but because those questions aren't part of the play either of you came to perform. The real story is sitting right there at the table, sparkling on cue, and the interview is carefully designed to be about everything except it. The man in the corner shifts, almost imperceptibly, when a question drifts toward anything real, and you feel the cue the way a horse feels a rein, and you steer back to safer ground without seeming to. It's seamless. You've done it 100 times. The reporter never notices the small course correction, never feels the gentle hand on the wheel, leaves convinced he had a candid afternoon with a delightful young star. Mr. Pratt thanks you warmly, gathers his notes, shakes your hand, and tells you it was a genuine pleasure, and he means it, because you gave him a lovely afternoon and a printable star. The man in the corner sees him out. You let the prepared smile relax, the bottle's brightness dimming a notch now that the performance is over. Tomorrow, a few 100,000 readers will meet a candid, charming, well-rested young woman who does not exist, and will feel, pleasantly, that they know you. Your contract comes up for renewal at fixed points, and at each one the studio gets to decide whether to keep you, while you get to decide nothing. This is called picking up the option. For weeks beforehand you live in a particular kind of suspense, working harder, weighing less, smiling more, trying to be undeniable, because the people who hold the option are watching, and the option only goes one direction with your consent and both directions with theirs. You can be renewed, you can be dropped, you cannot be the one who chooses. The option is the contract's cruelest piece of engineering, and the most elegant. You're bound for 7 years, but the studio is only ever bound until the next checkpoint, at which it can quietly let you go if your numbers have slipped, or your face has stopped testing well, or a cheaper newcomer has caught someone's eye. You carry the full weight of the commitment. They carry an exit they can take every few months. It's a marriage where only one spouse has to keep showing up, and you're the one who packed the bags. Mr. Calloway, the executive whose desk your fate sits on, is perfectly friendly in the weeks before a pickup, which somehow makes it worse. He greets you in the corridor, asks after the new picture, says he's heard wonderful things, and you scan every word for the verdict, because his good cheer might mean you're safe or might just mean he's a man who's good at corridors. You can't tell. You're not meant to be able to tell. The not knowing is the leash, and you walk yourself with it. So you become, in the run-up, the best version of the asset you can manufacture. You drop the extra inch without being asked. You arrive early, leave last, hit every mark, charm every columnist, take the pill a little more readily, because the pill is what lets you be tireless, bright, and undeniable at exactly the moment your continued employment depends on being tireless and bright. The threat of being dropped is the most reliable thing in the world for increasing a person's intake, and the studio knows it. The terror underneath is specific and physical. To be dropped isn't just to lose a job, it's to lose the bungalow, the salary, the name, the entire scaffolded life, and to be released, suddenly, as a person trained for nothing but this and dependent on a bottle the studio dispensed. Freedom, from where you sit, looks a great deal like falling, and yet some small buried part of you, the part that remembers the bus and the cardboard suitcase, almost wishes they would drop you, just to end the waiting, just to have the choice made even if you don't get to make it. You don't say this aloud, you barely let yourself think it, but it's there, the strange longing to be released from a thing you'd never have the strength to leave on your own, the wish that someone would open the cage so you wouldn't have to learn whether you could. The decision, when it comes as a memo, or a phone call, or Mr. Calloway's hand on your shoulder and the words "good news." The relief, if it's good news, is enormous and immediate and faintly humiliating. The joy of a person grateful to keep a thing that's slowly destroying her. You'll celebrate. You'll mean it. You'll take the pill the next morning with the renewed knowledge that you're worth keeping, which is the only verdict this place lets you feel about yourself. Mr. Calloway smiles and says the studio is delighted to be continuing your wonderful journey together, and you thank him sincerely, your heart lifting in the helpless way it's been trained to. You're staying. The bungalow is safe. The schedule resumes. And the clock starts again on the next pickup, the next stretch of working harder and weighing less and smiling more for the privilege of being chosen once more by people who never had to wonder, for 1 second, whether they'd be chosen back. There comes a morning when you take the pill and nothing happens, or not enough happens, and this is its own quiet kind of emergency. Your body has been doing this long enough that the old dose has stopped delivering the old lift. The fog does not clear. The heart does not race in the helpful way. You are awake but not awake, present but underwater, and you understand without being told that the answer the system offers is never less. It is more, a bigger dose to reach a feeling that keeps moving further away. This is tolerance, though no one in the building uses the word. Your body, clever and adaptable, has spent months learning to brace against the drug, building its defenses, so that the dose which once lifted you like a wave now barely rocks the boat. The lovely brightness of those first weeks, The magnificent, capable feeling has receded like a tide going out, and you stand on the wet sand where it used to be, holding the same pill, waiting for an ocean that no longer reaches the shore. The frightening part is that the misery comes back before the brightness does. Without enough of the drug, the borrowed energy can't be borrowed, and the bill for all the previous loans starts arriving at once, a deep, weighted exhaustion that the pill used to hide. You feel, suddenly, the true depth of how tired you actually are, how tired you've been for years. The whole accumulated debt visible for the first time because the curtain that hid it has worn thin. It's terrifying. It makes you reach, immediately, for more. And more is exactly what the system is built to provide. You go to Dr. Ainsley, you tell him the pills aren't doing it anymore, and he nods, unsurprised, and adjusts the dose upward, the way he's adjusted it upward for 100 others. There's no other lever to pull here. The machine doesn't have a setting for less. When the drug fails, the only sanctioned response is a stronger version of the thing that's failing, which is the precise mechanism by which a manageable habit becomes an unmanageable one, click by click, refill by refill. You chase the original feeling, which is the saddest part, because the original feeling is gone and isn't coming back. The first high is a country you can't get back to. You just keep buying tickets, and the tickets keep costing more. Meanwhile, the body keeps a ledger you can't see. Each increase asks more of a heart that was never consulted, raises a pressure no one's measuring, frays a system that has no union and files, no complaint it can't be overruled on. The bigger dose buys you function, gets you through the day, holds the schedule together, and it does this by spending a principle you can't replace, drawing down something that doesn't refill, in service of a film that will be in theatres for 6 weeks and forgotten. The genuine horror of tolerance is that it has no ceiling the studio respects. There's always a higher dose, a stronger preparation, a shot instead of a pill, an answer to every plateau except the one answer that would actually help, which is to stop, to rest, to let the body climb back out of the hole on its own slow terms. That answer isn't available. There's a picture to finish. The schedule doesn't recognize recovery as a category. It only knows whether you showed up bright, and it will keep raising the dose until you do. So you take the bigger one. You feel a thinner, meaner version of the old lift. Enough to stand, enough to work, not enough to feel like the girl from the screen test ever again. You go to the lot, you hit your marks, and somewhere underneath the function, the tiredness you glimpsed this morning settles into weight, a tenant who stopped paying rent and knows you won't evict it. Tonight you have a date, and you did not pick the person, the studio did, because your romance this season is a publicity matter. The two of you are seen at the right restaurant, photographed at the right angle, and reported as a budding love story in tomorrow's columns. You may barely know each other, you may not like each other. None of that is relevant to the arrangement, which exists to sell tickets and shape your image, and which you attend on schedule, energetic and glowing, with the help you always have. The gentleman tonight is Hal Brentwood, another of the studio's contract players, a square-jawed leading man with a smile insured for more than your salary. You've met him twice. He's perfectly pleasant in the way of someone you have no actual relationship with, and he arrives at your door with flowers a publicist chose, to take you to a restaurant a publicist booked, where a photographer a publicist tipped off will happen to be waiting by the entrance. The whole evening was cast like a scene, because it is one. The romance exists because the studio decided it should, and the reasons it might decide so are many. Maybe your last picture needs a love angle, or a real attachment of yours needs covering up, which is a use these arrangements serve more often than anyone admits. You aren't told the reason. You're told the restaurant and the time, and you understand that being charming and visibly smitten for 2 hours is simply tonight's scene, with a maitre d' instead of a director. You perform the date the way you perform everything, on the manufactured sparkle. The pill is doing its work as you laugh at Hal's jokes for the benefit of the long lens across the street, as you lean in at the photogenic angle, as you let your hand rest on his for exactly the beat a photographer needs. None of it is real, and all of it will read as real tomorrow. A tender, candid moment between two young hearts, captured by luck, printed by noon, believed by millions. Hal, to his credit, is a good scene partner. He's done this before too, with other women, for other reasons, and he knows the choreography, when to lean in, when to laugh, how to look at you like you hung the moon while quietly telling you about his actual girlfriend under the noise of the band. You like him better for the honesty, The two of you conduct a fake romance and a real, dry, conspiratorial friendship at the same table, one for the camera and one for yourselves, and the second one is the only true thing at the table. The loneliness of it sneaks up on you between courses. You're on a date, beautifully dressed, photographed as half of a love story the whole country will sigh over, and you have never in your life felt less likely to actually be loved. Real intimacy requires a self you can show, and your self is managed, scripted, dosed, and rented. The photographer gets his shot as you leave, the two of you laughing in the restaurant doorway, Hal's hand at the small of your back, the picture that will run tomorrow under a headline about young love. The flash goes, the scene is complete. The instant the lens lowers, you both relax, the smiles going off like switches, and Hal asks, in his normal voice, whether you want a real cheeseburger somewhere nobody's watching, and it's the most romantic thing anyone's said to you in months. He drives you home the long way, and you eat contraband food in the dark of the car and laugh at the absurdity of your lives. Two strangers manufactured into lovers, friends only in the gaps the studio forgot to schedule. He drops you at the bungalow, a chaste real good night where the cameras can't see, and you go in alone to the saucer and the glass and the yellow capsule, the love story safely filed for the morning columns, your actual heart exactly as untouched as it was before the flowers arrived. There is a cigarette in your hand more often than there is food, and this is not an accident. It is a strategy. The cigarette is a prop the camera loves, a thing to do with your hands, and, most usefully, a way to push hunger one more hour down the road. Between the pills that kill your appetite and the smoke that distracts what survives, actual eating becomes an occasional event rather than a daily one. You are kept thin by a system that has quietly replaced your lunch with chemistry and your dinner with a habit. The cigarette is everywhere in your life, which is to say it's everywhere in everyone's life right now, but yours does extra duty. The prop man, a gruff kind soul named Tibbets, keeps your brand in a case on the cart and has one lit and ready before most scenes, because the studio decided long ago that you look marvellous with smoke curling up past your cheekbone. He hands it over with a wink and a low word, like a bartender who knows you've had a day, which you have, which you always have. The camera genuinely loves it, and that's the part that makes it respectable. Smoke catches the light. A cigarette gives your hands something graceful to do, turns a pause into a moment, lets you punctuate a line with a slow exhale that reads as worldly and unbothered. Half the glamour of the era is just beautiful people exhaling beautifully, and you've learned to do it as well as anyone. The tilt of the wrist, the narrowed eye, the plume drifting up like punctuation. It's a skill. You're good at it. It's also slowly tarring a pair of lungs already being asked to dance 40 takes. But the real job of the cigarette, the unspoken one, is hunger management. When the pill has half closed your appetite and the soup hasn't touched the rest, the cigarette steps in to bully whatever hunger remains into silence for another hour. Light one, and the body's request for actual food gets postponed, overruled, talked out of itself. It's the appetite suppressant you're allowed to be seen using, the polite public face of a private starvation, a way to not eat that looks like sophistication instead of what it is. So the trio does its work, day after day, the pill and the soup and the smoke, and your body, asked to perform like an athlete and fed like a hostage, makes up the difference out of itself. You're thin, gloriously thin, exactly as thin as the costume and the car demand, and the thinness is bought on credit drawn against a body that will present its bill eventually, with interest, in a currency you can't yet imagine. The grim joke of it is that everything keeping you employable is also quietly subtracting from you. The pill that keeps you awake wears the heart. The cigarette that keeps you thin tars the lungs. The barbiturate that lets you sleep narrows the gap between rest and the other thing. Tibbet sees it, in his quiet prop man way, the way the crew sees everything and says nothing. He notices you eat less than you should and smoke more than anyone, and now and then he leaves a sandwich on your chair without comment, the way Hazel slips the cracker. Small acts of mercy from the people with no power, the only people who seem to register that you're a body and not a budget line. You usually don't eat it. The pill won't let you. But you notice that he noticed, and on some days that's the closest thing to being cared for that comes your way. You take the cigarette he hands you, draw on it, exhale the beautiful plume the camera adores, and feel the hunger step obediently back into its corner for another hour. The scene is called. You hit your mark, smoke curling up past your cheekbone, thin, luminous, and quietly starving. doing the one thing the whole apparatus agrees you do best, which is look effortless while running on nothing at all. Eventually, the body sends a bill it will not let you postpone, and you collapse or come close enough to it that the studio notices. So they send you away to rest, to a quiet facility with grounds and a discreet name where you are meant to recover. You sleep. You eat real food. For a little while you are treated like a person who broke rather than a property that malfunctioned. And then, when you are patched well enough to work, you are brought back to the exact machine that broke you and handed the exact bottle. The collapse, when it comes, is almost a relief, which tells you something. Years of the borrowed lift and metered sleep finally overdraw the account, and one day your body simply refuses, on a set, in a dressing room, somewhere, and the refusal is so total that even the studio can't pill its way past it, and there's a quiet decision, made above your head, as all decisions are, to send the asset out for repair. The facility is lovely, in the way money makes things lovely, with lawns and a discreet name on no sign and staff trained to be gentle with famous people who've come apart. Dr. Mercer runs it, an older man with a calm, unhurried, and unbought manner who, mercifully, does not work for your studio, and who looks at you on the first day with something you haven't seen aimed at yourself in years, plain medical concern, untangled from any production schedule. He asks how you've been sleeping, and for once the question isn't a trap. The first days are strange and then wonderful. They let you sleep, real sleep, the kind that arrives on its own and leaves when it's ready, no capsule, no nurse with a clipboard ticking a box. They feed you actual food, plates of it, and your shrunken appetite slowly remembers what it's for. The shaking eases. The grey tone leaves your skin. For a few green weeks you're allowed to simply be a tired person, getting better, and you feel, distantly, like someone you used to know is coming back into the room. Dr. Mercer is honest with you, which is its own kind of medicine. He names plainly what the pills have been doing, the strain on the heart, the trap of the rising dose, and he treats you like an adult who deserves the truth about her own body, which no one in your professional life has ever once done. You find yourself wanting to cry at the simple dignity of being told what is happening to you, but the rest cure has a built-in limit, and everyone knows what it is. You aren't here to be free. You're here to be made functional again, fast enough to finish the picture that's waiting, and the moment you're functional, the lawns and the honesty and the real food end. Recovery, here, is just maintenance with a nicer view. So the day comes when the studio decides you're well enough, and a car arrives, and Dr. Mercer walks you to it with real reluctance in his kind face. He knows where you're going. He knows what's waiting. He's seen patients leave these grounds healed and return, months or years later, more broken than before. Because he can mend the body, but he can't change the machine, and the machine is the disease. He shakes your hand. He tells you, quietly, to take care of yourself, and you both hear how little those words can do against where you're headed. You go back through the studio gate, rested, clear-eyed, a few pounds heavier, briefly whole. By the end of the first week, the schedule has reclaimed you, the call sheet, the lights, the weigh-in, and on the nightstand of the bungalow the saucer reappears, the glass beside it, the small white pill dead center, set out by hands that were never told you were ever supposed to stop. The cure cured nothing it was paid to leave intact. You're back. The bill didn't get paid at the facility. It just moved itself to a later date. There is always someone younger waiting, and you know exactly where she sits, because you used to be her. The studio keeps a deep bench of fresh faces under contract, any one of whom could be groomed to do what you do, possibly cheaper, possibly with fewer complaints about the hours. You feel this on every difficult day, the awareness that your difficulty is being noted, that complaint is a luxury, that the line of replacements is real and patient, and does not need pills yet because it has not been here long enough. The studio signs them by the dozen, young women plucked from beauty contests and soda fountains and other people's screen tests, and keeps them on small contracts in a sort of holding pattern, taking lessons, posing for stills, waiting for a part. They're the inventory behind the inventory, a deep shelf of replacement faces, and their existence is not a secret. It's a message, delivered without a word, every time you pass them in the corridor. You are not irreplaceable. You were never irreplaceable. Irreplaceable is not a category this business stocks. There's one in particular this season, a girl named Dolores, 19 and luminous, who watches your scenes from the edge of the set with an expression you recognize because you wore it once. She studies you the way you once studied the star you were brought in behind, drinking in everything, the marks, the angles, the way you hit a line, learning your job in case the studio ever decides she should have it. She's sweet to you, she means it. She also can't help being exactly what she is, which is the future, standing politely in the wings. The understudy's existence is the studio's quiet insurance, and it does more work than any contract clause. Why negotiate with a difficult star when a grateful one waits in the corridor? The bench doesn't have to do anything to discipline you. It just has to exist, visible, younger, eager, and you discipline yourself, swallowing the complaint along with the pill. So you don't complain, ever, about anything that matters. You don't tell them the hours are inhuman or the bottle is killing you, because complaint marks you as trouble, and trouble is exactly the thing the bench is there to replace. You learn to perform gratitude, to seem thrilled with a life that's eating you, because the alternative is to be quietly succeeded by a girl who isn't, yet. The cruelty of it is generational, a wheel that turns on everyone the same way. You replace someone, once, some star who'd grown tired or expensive or used up, and you did it without quite meaning to, simply by being younger, cheaper, and willing. Now you're the one being measured against the next arrival, and one day Dolores will be measured against whoever comes after her, the whole thing rotating endlessly, each new face fed into the same machine, used the same way, and set aside the same way when a fresher one appears. You watch Dolores watching you and feel something complicated, not jealousy exactly, more like grief, for her and for yourself at once. She thinks the part is the prize. She doesn't know yet that the part comes with the saucer and the glass and the 4 o'clock pill, that the brightness she admires in you is rented, that the thing she's studying so hard to inherit is a beautiful slow trap with her name already half written on it. She smiles at you when the scene wraps, shy and admiring, and tells you that you are wonderful, and you thank her warmly and mean it, this girl who is being kept on hand to replace you. The two of you stand there a moment, the star and the understudy, the present and the future, both of you smiling, only one of you yet knowing what the smile costs. Then you go to your dressing room, where the bottle waits, and she goes back to her lessons, learning, every day, to become exactly the thing that will one day make you unnecessary. There is a stretch of the night, usually in the small hours, that belongs to no pill, and it is the worst hour you know. The sleeping pill has loosened its grip, but the morning pill is not due yet, and in the gap you are simply awake with yourself, no chemistry to lift you and none to put you down. The day's brightness is gone and tomorrow's has not arrived. You lie there in the real version of your body, tired in a way that no longer has a bottom, and you wait for the schedule to come rescue you again. The house is dead quiet at this hour, the kind of quiet that has a sound to it, a faint ringing in the ears where the world's noise used to be. The barbiturate has worn thin, releasing you back into consciousness before you're anywhere near rested, and you surface into the dark like a swimmer who's been held under too long, gasping, blinking, return to a self you'd rather have stayed away from. There's no pill to take. It isn't time. The schedule that governs everything has, for these few hours, simply forgotten you. This is the only hour of the day when you meet yourself undosed, and it's why you dread it. With no chemistry in the driver's seat, you feel the actual condition of the body you've been borrowing against for years, the true exhaustion, deep, structural, and bottomless, a tiredness that sleep stopped fixing a long time ago. You just usually have a pill standing between you and the knowing of it. The thoughts that come at 4 o'clock are the honest ones, which is precisely the problem. In the bright chemical day you can outrun them, but here, undefended, they catch you. You think about the girl from the screen test and how far away she's gotten. You think about the heart you can feel working too hard in your chest even now, at rest, in the dark. You think about how many years this has been and how it ends, and the answer arrives flat and certain and you push it back under as fast as you can. Through the curtains, the night watchman's flashlight sweeps the grounds, Wallace doing his slow rounds, and the beam crosses your ceiling for a moment, steady and indifferent, then moves on. He doesn't know you're awake. He thinks the bungalow is full of a sleeping star, resting up for the wonderful life the magazines keep promising she has, and the small ordinary fact of him out there, walking, doing his quiet job, is almost unbearably comforting. You could reach for something. There's the inhaler in the coat, the unofficial supply, the one that doesn't answer to the schedule, and you think about it, lying there, the way a drowning person thinks about anything that floats. Some nights you take it, and the cycle quietly accelerates, 2 pills becoming 3, the careful schedule eroding from the inside in the dead of night when no one's watching and the inhaler is right there in the dark. Mostly, though, you just wait, because waiting is what you've been trained to do, and because some stubborn ember of the original girl still wants to get through 1 hour, just this one, on nothing but her own self. You lie in the bottomless tiredness and you count the minutes toward the hour when Greta's saucer becomes fair game, when the schedule remembers you, when the small white pill will lift you back out of yourself and into the bright, functional day where the 4 o'clock thoughts can't follow. The sky outside the curtain goes from black to the faintest grey. Somewhere a car door closes, an engine turns over, the lot beginning to stir. The hour is almost over. Soon it will be time, properly time, and you'll take the morning pill and the bottom will disappear again under the borrowed lift, and you'll be fine, you'll be wonderful, you'll be exactly the person the day requires. You just have to get through the last few minutes of being only plainly terribly yourself. The director says again, and you do it again, because perfect is his religion, and you are the offering. He is not cruel exactly. He simply cannot see the dancer or the weeping woman in front of him as a body with a limit, only as an instrument that has not yet produced the precise sound he hears in his head. So the scene repeats, and repeats. The number of takes a human can survive and the number of takes he requires were reconciled, long ago, by a chemical neither of you mentions on the set. Mr. Van Dorn directs this picture, and Mr. Van Dorn is, everyone agrees, a genius, which is the word the industry uses for a man whose vision is allowed to cost other people whatever it costs. Today's scene requires you to cry, really cry, on cue, take after take, and to mean it each time, because he can tell, he insists, when it's faked. So you find the grief somewhere inside, which lately is not hard to find, and you let it out for the camera, and he watches, and he says, quietly, again. The emotional scenes are their own particular cruelty, worse in some ways than the dancing. To cry on command, you have to open something in yourself, reach into a real well of sorrow and draw it up. And Mr. Van Dorn requires you to do this 15, 20 times in an afternoon, hauling the grief up and pouring it out and hauling it up again, until the well is scraped raw and the sorrow stops being a performance and becomes simply the truth of how you feel, on display, on a schedule. He's not a monster. That's what makes it hard to hate him. He genuinely sees something in his mind, some perfect version of the moment, luminous, exact, and unreachable, and he's chasing it with everything he has, and he assumes, because he has to, that you can chase it with him indefinitely. His job is the perfect take. The cost of the perfect take is, conveniently, somebody else's department. He'll get an award for it, you'll get a nap, and the bottle is what makes his perfectionism survivable, the quiet arrangement underneath the whole set. A rested, unmedicated woman could give him maybe 5 real takes before the well ran dry. The chemical version of you can give him 20, can keep producing brightness and grief on demand long past the natural limit, which is exactly why the chemical version exists. His impossible standard and your impossible stamina shake hands inside a pill, and the handshake is never spoken of. There's a strange intimacy in it. You and Van Dorn locked together in pursuit of his vision, you bleeding for it and him refusing to settle. So you reach deeper than you should, and the pill helps you give what you don't have, and you both call the result art. The real danger is that there's no natural break on a genius with a chemically tireless instrument. A normal actor's exhaustion would, at some point, simply end the day, force a mercy, but the bottle removes the break, lets the afternoon stretch toward a perfection that costs you something real with every take, because the one signal that would tell him to stop, your collapse, has been chemically postponed out of his sightline. Finally, on the 20th take or the 25th, something aligns, the light and the tears and the small true thing he's been hunting, and Mr. Van Dorn goes very still behind the camera, and then he says, softly, almost reverently, print, and the relief breaks over the whole set. He comes to you, takes your hands, tells you it was perfect, that you gave him something extraordinary, and he's right, and you're hollowed out. Somewhere in the wreckage you feel a flicker of the only clean pride this place ever offers, the pride of having made, out of your own scraped raw self, the thing he saw in his head. Then you go to your chair, where Mr. Voss is already waiting to repair what the crying did to your face. A new girl arrives on the lot, 16 and luminous and thrilled to be chosen, and you watch the whole thing begin again from the other side. You see her sign, you see her put on the schedule. You see the day someone first sets a small white pill beside her with a glass of water and explains kindly that all the busy stars take a little something to keep their energy up. You know every step that is coming for her. You also know that warning her is not a thing this place permits you to do. Her name is June, and she's so new the studio hasn't finished renaming her yet, still half wearing the name her mother gave her, still saying thank you to everyone, still amazed by the commissary and the sound stages and the sheer fact of being here. She reminds you of someone, painfully, and it takes you a day to place the feeling, and then you do. She reminds you of you, the screen test you, the bus and the suitcase you, the one who walked in chosen and unmarked before any of it began. You watch the machine take her in hand with the smooth competence of long practice. The contract, presented as a miracle, the biography, being written somewhere even now. The weigh-in, the wardrobe, the schedule that will wake her at 4. And then, inevitably, the morning you knew was coming, when she mentions she's a little tired from the long days, and someone gently, helpfully, produces the first pill and tells her the kind, practiced, monstrous lie, just a little something all the stars take, perfectly safe, keeps your energy up. You are standing close enough to see her take it. That's the part that undoes you. She doesn't hesitate. Why would she? A grown-up she trusts has handed her a small, harmless pill in the most glamorous place on earth, and she swallows it with a sip of water and a grateful smile. 16 years old, and you watch the exact instant the cycle closes around her, invisible, painless, and complete. In 20 minutes she'll feel wonderful. That's the worst of it. She'll feel wonderful, and she'll be so glad. Every cell in you wants to cross the room and knock the glass from her hand. You know where this goes, the tolerance and the bigger dose, the yellow capsule and the 4 o'clock hour, the heart that learns to gallop. You could tell her in one sentence, you could maybe save her. And you say nothing, because the morality clause and Mr. Strang and the bench and your own raw need all stand silently between you and that sentence, and because a star who warns the new girl about the pills is a star who will not be a star much longer. The silence is the cruelest thing you've ever participated in, and you participate in it perfectly. You smile at June. You tell her she's going to be wonderful, and you hate yourself with a precision the pill can't quite numb. This is how it continues. Not through villains exactly, but through people like you, used up and frightened and silent, passing the lie down the line because breaking it would cost more than you have left to spend. Someone warned you once, maybe, or tried to. Some tired star giving you a look that said run, a look you mistook for snobbery. June can't hear it either, wouldn't believe it, because the brightness is so lovely at the start and the warning makes no sense until it's far too late to use. So you let her keep her wonderful afternoon. You let the machine do what the machine does. She finishes her water and bounces off toward her lessons, luminous, chosen, dosed, already a day into a life she thinks is a fairy tale, and you stand there watching her go, holding your terrible useful silence, the newest link in a chain that runs back further than anyone on this lot can remember, and forward as far as there are 16-year-olds with suitcases and dreams. After enough years on the cycle, you stop being able to remember the person who arrived, and this is the part nobody warns you about, because nobody who could warn you is still in a position to. The pills that were supposed to be temporary became the floor you stand on. The doses that were small got larger. The nights you were turned off and the mornings you were switched on blur into one long managed day that has been running, without a real pause, for most of your adult life. You came here to be a star. You stayed to keep the schedule. The body keeps the receipts. There's a tremor in your hands now that the makeup can't address, a fine constant thing you've learned to hide by keeping them busy, holding a glass, a cigarette, a prop. The heart you can feel in the small hours has been galloping on borrowed orders for years, and it does not consider this normal, and it has begun, quietly, to send notices you can't read but can feel. You are not old. You are simply worn the way a thing is worn when it's been run past its rating daily for a decade. The pills stopped being a choice, so gradually you never caught the moment it happened. There was no day you decided to need them. There was just a long slope, one refill at a time, until you looked up and found the temporary helper had become the load-bearing wall. the thing the whole structure of you now rests on. Take it away and the structure comes down. You know this because you felt it start to, in the 4 o'clock hour, and never let it finish. What you grieve when you let yourself is the girl from the screen test, the one in the vault, nervous, luminous, and whole. You can't get back to her. You've tried to remember what it felt like to be tired and then sleep, hungry and then eat, sad and then simply be sad without an audience or a cue, and the memory has gone soft and distant, a country you're no longer sure you visited. And yet you made something real in all those years. The pictures exist. People sat in the dark and were moved, fell in love, forgot their troubles for 90 minutes because of a glow you produced. And the brightness was rented, but the gift to those strangers was genuine. Somewhere a stranger has your face framed on her dresser. Somewhere your own hand shakes too hard to lift a cup. The men who ran this town are mostly remembered fondly now, their names on buildings you can still drive past. The girls they used up are remembered as tragedies, beautiful faces that flamed out young, almost never as what they were, workers in the most glamorous factory ever built, kept on a schedule until it finished them. The small white pill itself went on long after the studios learned to be quiet about it, spreading out of Hollywood into the whole tired country, sold across counters for decades, until the law finally caught up. By then, the body's receipts had mostly come due, in hospitals, in headlines, in the short arithmetic of a heart asked to gallop too long. You take the morning pill, because there's a car idling, because the schedule that's run for most of your life has no setting for stopping, and neither, anymore, do you. The brightness comes up thinner than it used to, enough to stand. You finish the glass. You check your hands, see the tremor, fold them, and arrange your face into the one the day requires. Somewhere a camera's warming up, ready to catch a star at her radiant best. And it will, because you are very good at this, because you have been doing it your whole bright borrowed life, because the show, whatever it costs the body keeping it, goes on. So that was your night in 1930s Hollywood. You were woken by a small white pill before the sun came up, fed a bowl of clear soup and a cigarette and called it lunch, painted into a better face before dawn, kept upright through an 18-hour day, danced until your stockings wore through, charmed a woman in an enormous hat who could end you with a paragraph, and were finally switched off at night by a yellow capsule on a schedule someone else kept. A glamorous life, run like a factory, fueled by a drug they bought next to the cough drops. N. It's easy, all these years later, to file those luminous faces under tragedy and move on. But they were young people who came a long way on a bus with a cardboard suitcase and a dream, and they worked, harder than almost anyone, at a job that asked for the impossible and supplied a pill to make the impossible look effortless. The brightness was rented. The gift they handed the strangers in the dark was real. And. The strangest part is that the gift still works. The pictures are still out there, still glowing, still moving people who will never know what the eyes cost, or that the radiant girl on the screen went straight from that scene to a saucer and a glass and a pill set out by someone who was not her. N. Thank you for spending this quiet hour here with me, and for being kind enough to listen all the way to the end. You don't have a call sheet tonight. Nobody set anything on your nightstand. There's no 4 o'clock pill, and no car idling in the dark. Only sleep, the ordinary, unmanaged, gloriously free kind, which is the one luxury all the money in that town could never quite buy. N, so let your shoulders drop. Let the day fade out of your hands. Let your breathing go slow and unhurried, with no schedule and no light hot enough to bake under, just the dark and the quiet and a rest that answers to no one but you. N. Sleep well.